The anime's narrative began by presenting the past of Haruto Amakawa. After his parents' separation, he was forced to leave his city and move far away. Before departing, however, he made a promise to his childhood friend, Mihao. One day he would return to take her with him and marry her. Deep down, Haruto considered himself audacious for having said something so direct, almost as if he had achieved a great feat. Even so, time moved on and the story showed that, many years later, he would end up completely forgetting that promise. Haruto himself thought that this matched the reputation that men did not usually keep what they said. One morning, while going to school inside a bus, Haruto became involved in a devastating accident. The vehicle lost control, collided with a truck, and soon after was violently struck by a train. Suddenly, everything went dark. When he awakened, he found himself in a dark room, not knowing where he was. Confused, he thought, "What is happening?" Shortly afterward, he realized that he had been taken to another world. He himself admitted that, deep down, he had always wished for a second chance. Thus, the protagonist retained memories of his past life, such as training with his grandfather and the fatal accident. Memories that began to cause intense headaches. At that moment, some bandits invaded the place and called out to him, now known as Rio, complaining that he had not gone to Sao Pedro. They were carrying a sack and celebrating the day's profit. While the protagonist salivated just imagining grilled meat tacos, one of the men, bothered by the smell, said harshly that he needed to wash himself, stating that he should take a real bath. Rio then left the place quickly and, while eating a few small tacos, recalled that he had died at 20 years old in the accident. Even so, he tried to convince himself that, in that world, Rio's memories were the ones that truly mattered. He remembered having lived happily with his parents in a simple cabin, even though they were foreigners from distant lands. However, one day, upon returning home, he found them alongside a man who attacked him with a stabbing, giving rise to a story marked by violence. At that moment, hooded figures appeared behind him. Vanessa, the leader of the group, asked in a rude manner whether he had seen a young woman with purple hair around there, treating him like a delinquent and showing strong prejudice. However, an albino girl named Selia asked to speak with Rio, apologized for her companion's behavior, and introduced herself politely. She confessed that she was surprised by Rio's black hair, since in that world unusual colors were common. She commented that she and the other girls wore clothes similar to My Little Pony characters to blend in better with the environment. Rio said that he had not seen the girl they were looking for and also warned them about the dangers of that region, reminding them that the clothes attracted too much attention. Vanessa then stated that they would change outfits. Before leaving, Selia used her ability to analyze the surroundings. She found nothing suspicious, but noticed that Rio possessed an absurd amount of mana, something that surprised her. He, without understanding the reason, simply felt confused. Before moving away, Selia offered a reward for information. Rio ran back home trying to hide from the kidnappers. However, upon entering, he was surprised by a stab to the chest. The intention was to leave him agonizing for a few minutes, but by an unexpected coincidence, the blow struck a pouch of coins hidden beneath his clothes. The masked man prepared to finish him off when Axia, a spirit, appeared before Rio, held his face, and said that he needed to unleash his true potential. Soon after, Rio felt his body strengthen suddenly. The masked man was forced to retreat, unable to keep up with his agile movements. With a precise attack, Rio left the enemy unconscious. Then, he heard a strange sound coming from the sack. When he checked it, he found Flora, who begged for help to escape but appeared to be mentally unstable. Rio decided to take her to the hooded figures. However, Christina, Flora's sister, received her with a slap and called her a liar. Rio thought to himself, "What a strange way to say thank you." Vanessa then drew her sword and ordered him to accompany them. With no choice, Rio obeyed. Soldiers surrounded the place, while a hooded man appeared, eliminated the masked man, and disappeared shortly afterward. Rio was imprisoned by Charles, who demanded that he confess to Flora's kidnapping. Days later, the purple-haired girl awakened and demanded to see Rio immediately, but he was gravely injured. As he refused to assume guilt, Selia and Vanessa entered and demanded his release. Selia used magic to heal him, while the blonde man left the place irritated. All of it seemed very strange to Rio. He awakened beside Selia, who apologized for all the suffering he had endured. She explained that he would have an audience with the king. Rio then asked her to teach him the correct protocols, since he did not know how to behave or even how to properly use utensils. Thus, Rio met the king, the queen, and their daughters, surprising everyone with his striking appearance. Tall, elegant, and handsome, the royal couple could have offered him riches, lands, or even brides. However, contrary to all expectations, they granted him free education at the most prestigious academy in the kingdom, where Selia taught. Before entering, she warned him that wealthy children could be quite difficult and offered to support him. When he introduced himself to the class, Rio was observed with strangeness and contempt, even becoming the target of mockery. Even so, Selia conducted the lesson normally. Later, Rio went to the studio to look for Alvin, but discovered that Selia had forgotten that she had scheduled private reading lessons with him. Upon entering, he found the place completely messy, with paint spilled, books out of place, and nothing on the floor. There, he discovered that Selia was only 12 years old, but a true genius. At the end of the day, Rio finished the private lessons and acknowledged her impressive talent. Memories of his previous life returned to his mind, leaving him sad. To cheer him up, Selia prepared tea and asked how he was doing, offering help whenever he needed it. The following morning, he took part in a self-defense class. The instructor trained directly with Rio, who surprised everyone with a completely different fighting style. The duel began, and he applied techniques from his past life. His performance was exceptional, earning him excellent evaluations. The instructor commented that Rio had a promising future as a knight, but he politely said that this was not the path he intended to follow. He thought that life truly offered opportunities in the most unexpected moments. Over time, the exam period arrived. For Rio, everything seemed easy, while the young nobles found it extremely complicated, which generated irritation and envy. As he left, he noticed the looks of disdain from other students, which made him remember his mother, Haruto, whom he had only reunited with in high school, too late to fix the past. Thus, Rio promised to try to erase Haruto's memories. The next day, the results list was released. Rio ranked first, tied with Christina, a young noble named Alfonso, famous for being extremely annoying, accused Rai of having cheated. Christina and one of her friends quickly reprimanded him, telling him that he should stop that, as it was not an attitude worthy of a gentleman. Selia also appeared to clarify the situation, trying to put an end to the confusion. Although Alfonso and Christina ended up moving away clearly irritated with the protagonist, later, Sylvia admitted that she feared that the wealthy students would begin to treat Rai with cruelty. Since he always seemed alone, Rai, however, asked her not to worry, explaining that if he started to worry, he would never be able to stop. His words always carried a calmness and a curious wisdom, to the point of causing strangeness. Part of Selia insisted that it made no sense, because if he truly had someone he could call a friend, that person would only be her. Upon hearing this, Selia became intensely flushed and, overcome by embarrassment, ended up agreeing to be his friend. What an impressive objective. Gradually, there was a sense that this relationship was gaining proportions greater than it seemed, and, deep down, everything pointed to the beginning of something deeper. Rio thanked her, saying that he fully trusted Selia and that he knew he could count on her whenever he needed to. The girl replied that, in difficult moments, he would never be alone. Rai then made a strange comment. "A lemon in the hand is worth more than two flying." The phrase left the albino girl irritated, while she thought that she was still maturing, in constant evolution, like an investment that would only yield returns with time. And, speaking of time, 5 years passed until the arrival of the Knights tournament. On that occasion, Alphonse Stewart and Rai were chosen to compete. The complainer protested, saying that the commoner only got in the way, but the instructor explained that the decision had not been his. The protagonist ran to tell the news to Selia, who ended up blushing when she saw him so close. She thought that he had grown a lot, although he still had something small about him, like a minion. After that, as was already customary, the two had something together. At that moment, Rio revealed that he did not intend to become a knight. His plan was to leave the kingdom and return to the land of his parents, Aayagumo. The news deeply saddened Selia, who said she did not want him to leave and even offered him a job in her laboratory. Rio refused, believing that, soon, she would be forced to marry a rich man. Hurt, Selia thought that he was mocking her, while the protagonist reflected to himself, "That's totally my style." The tournament finally began, and the referee Alfred called the first participants. Rio was the first to enter the arena, having as his opponent Charles, the blonde man who had tormented him years earlier. The fight began with Rio calm and focused, while Charles, dominated by anger, charged without thinking. The blonde man's lack of control ended up being his downfall, and Rio won by disarming him. A curious victory, without a doubt, although Charles accepted the defeat at that moment. Later, after a few drinks, he muttered to himself that Rio would still pay for that. Ambassador Rise also watched the tournament and soon realized that the protagonist was the same one responsible for having ruined his plans involving the princess in the past. So this boy is connected to the villain, he thought. Back in the city, Selia waited for Rio, but when she noticed his strange behavior, she decided to follow him. She ended up witnessing another young woman confessing to him, which made her chest tighten. Jealousy was evident in her eyes. What a clever boy. The next day, Selia announced to the class that they would learn a new spell. Alonso immediately mocked, saying that, despite possessing a huge amount of mana, Rai was incapable of casting any magic. Selia encouraged everyone to try and then demonstrated that they still lacked control. In her thoughts, she practically screamed for them to master magic, reminding them at the end of the class that there were different levels of refinement. Stuart criticized Celia's impeccable demonstration, but soon turned to the protagonist, ordering him not to get too full of himself. He said that, although he seemed like a conqueror and the girl's favorite, his victory in the tournament had been pure luck. The rich complainer continued whining, but another boy came out in defense of Rio, stating that he would never disrespect a lady. As always, Rio remained calm and walked away, leaving Fiora worried. Her sister told her not to get involved, as an outdoor exercise would soon begin. The students divided into groups. Alphonse took leadership and explained that they needed to overcome several obstacles and reach the finish line before Saul, the extremely competitive girl. Stuart said he knew a shortcut better than the indicated path, and Christina accepted the idea, handing command over to him. The wealthy students began to use Rio as a carrier, and even when Flora offered to help, he politely refused. Later, monsters appeared unexpectedly. Alphonse proved to be a good leader by defeating them quickly, while Rio felt that they were being watched. And he was not wrong. Rise was observing everything closely. The group then reached a cliff, a perfect shortcut. After all, Stuart really knew what he was doing. However, before they could return, orcs appeared and surrounded them. After knocking several to the ground, the irritating Stuart ended up wounded by a spear and, in a desperate moment, pushed Flora off the cliff. Rio, with quick reflexes, jumped to save her and, using magic, placed her in safety, although he also ended up falling. On the other side, the others faced the orcs and, with great effort, managed to defeat them. Rio emerged unscathed, without understanding how or why that had happened. Stuart denied having pushed the princess, but several students had seen everything, and the complainer placed the blame on Rio. As the protagonist himself thought, everyone ended up believing the lie. Upon hearing the discussion, Rio felt that everything had completely gotten out of control. Some considered leaving him behind, but Flora refused to abandon him, which generated another argument. Before they could reach a decision, a minotaur appeared, paralyzing everyone with fear. The girls tried to use magic, while the boys rushed to attack. But even when strengthened, they could not injure the creature. We are lost, they thought. With no alternative, Alphonse ordered a retreat. Overcome by panic, everyone ran in different directions, and Flora remained caring for the wounded. The minotaur found her, and, when it was about to kill her, Rio appeared, cut off the creature's hand, and told the princess to flee, stating that he would face the monster alone. Christina, amazed, watched the fight. Rio managed to keep up with the beast's movements and, with a surprising attack, decapitated the minotaur. Easy, I do this every week, she would think, even without the privileges of a protagonist. After that, Rio left the place quickly, while Rise reflected that it had been fun to test him, since now he was certain that he possessed a terrifying power. Later, Selia went to the principal, but before entering, she overheard a conversation between him and Stuart's father, demanding that Rio be considered guilty. The principal ended up agreeing, since the protagonist had not appeared to defend himself. This left Selia uneasy, not knowing what had really happened that night. Rio appeared in the laboratory, and, upon seeing him, Selia ran to hug him. He told her everything immediately, and she considered the situation extremely unfair. She offered to defend him, but Rio explained that he knew he would lose any trial for not being a noble, a victim of the elite's privileges. Deep down, Selia understood that he had already decided to leave for Aayagumo, and that she was the only person he was saying goodbye to. Her eyes filled with tears, but Rio promised to send letters using the name Rio and swore that, in the future, they would meet again. Nearby, dishes from another world were being sold, and the owner would tell stories about Elizal, the ruler and inventor of the city. Hungry, Rio would drink a soup that would make him remember his past life. Continuing his journey, he would find an unconscious girl in the forest. When he tried to help, she would attack him, launching a poison dart. Rio would prepare an antidote and face the girl, being surprised by her speed, but managing to subdue her. The girl, Latifa, would cry and beg him to spare her life. He would decide to knock her unconscious with magic and remove her slave collar. Thus, he would discover that she had been the girl on the bus in the accident. Enslaved by Stuart, she had suffered torture. Upon waking, Latifa would cry in relief. She would admit that she had been sent to kill him. Rio would understand everything. Upon learning that she would no longer attack him, he would free her. He would speak of a land where beastmen lived freely. With nowhere to go, she would ask to accompany him. Though reluctant, Rio would accept. During the journey, he would care for her, moving her with real food. Upon crossing the border, they would camp. Latifa would reveal that she knew Tokyo, confirming that she also came from another world. In the morning, she would ask to call him brother. He would accept, deeply moved. Days later, they would face demi-humans, and a spirit would reveal itself to be connected to Rio. Later captured, he would awaken chained, but would be freed after explanations. The next day, Ursula would guide him to the council, where they would discover that he could see the world tree. There, they would thank him for saving Latifa and offer to reward him. He would not be surprised. Because of this, they offered the protagonist lodging in the village for some time, allowing Tifa to remain with him, assuring that everyone would be ready to help him with whatever he needed. For any necessity, Aram would be practically always nearby, especially because the protagonist had requested guidance in the spiritual arts. The elders agreed, and, at that very moment, a spirit appeared beside him. It was a young woman with green hair named Draz, the spirit of the world tree. She held the protagonist's hands and explained that she could see within him the presence of another spirit, as if a pact had already been formed, although he had no memory of it. Draz clarified that this detail explained his difficulties in using magic, making everything more understandable. She then offered to help him investigate the situation more deeply, holding his head unexpectedly while commenting that he possessed a large amount of Oz, something she found quite attractive. The atmosphere became curious, almost romantic. Soon after, Draz stated that a humanoid spirit resided within him, leaving everyone completely shocked. The protagonist did not know what to think, unable to decide whether it was a blessing or a danger. The fact was that, in times so ancient that almost no one remembered anymore, there existed spirits of a higher level, known as the Six Grades. After the War of the Divine Demons, they disappeared without a trace and were never seen again. The possibility raised was that the spirit within Rio was one of them, which in practice would place him on a level close to that of a divinity, comparable to the powerful Frana or the legendary Omnitrix. After that, he was taken to his new residence, where Latifa welcomed him with a warm hug before showing him every space in the house. Other girls were also there, introducing themselves excitedly to the sound of a long R. After the meal, they explained that, by Ursula's order, the three would begin living alongside Rio and Latifa. Thus, he met Sarah, the albino with light fur, Orphea, the blonde, and Alma, the redhead. He thought there truly was diversity for all tastes and mentally gave thanks for that. From that moment on, his routine truly began. He began to study spiritual arts, help with wine production at the forge, and train combat techniques. while Latifa grew closer to the girls, who took her for walks through vast flowered fields. For the protagonist, all of that felt like a scene from a charming anime, something almost perfect. In contrast, Rise appeared accompanied by another soldier, someone he had deceived with the promise of joining the royal guard. Together, they went to a cave to steal a weaver's egg. The young man questioned whether the creature's parents would not come after the egg, but Rise simply told him to wrap it well and carry it carefully, exactly as he had planned. A group of weavers followed them from a distance. 1 year passed since the arrival of Rio and Latifa. Then, Doral explained to the youths that, during the spiritual festival, Rio would be officially recognized as an ally, and Latifa would be accepted as a resident of Dria's village. To seal the recognition, Doral kissed both of their foreheads, while the young women applauded and the rest of the village prepared for the celebration. The protagonist soon found himself surrounded by the girls, unusually excited, and thought that this would certainly bring trouble. Orphea complained that he was incredibly distant, saying that even after so much time together, Rio still maintained an overly formal attitude. Sarah added, referring to herself in the third person, that they could be close friends, or even something more, if he wanted. Latifa felt jealous, while Alma asked them to stop those provocations, admitting that she also noticed how much he kept his distance, unlike the relationship he had with Latifa. In the end, Rio stated that he would try to get closer to them, thinking that this might be an unexpected opportunity. The girls left to fetch more wine for the party. Watching Latifa smile beside the others, a young woman thought that she could finally live in peace and safety, realizing that this indicated different paths beginning to form. She confided in Ursula that she intended to leave soon, and Ursula advised her to reveal this as soon as possible. At the same time, Rise and the other soldier rested in the forest, where Limo handed him a tracking pill, saying that he would check the area, when in truth, he intended to use him as a distraction. Elsewhere, the protagonist took Latifa away from the square, and she commented, in the third person, how much she liked living there. It was then that he revealed that he planned to leave, leaving her surprised. Latifa offered to accompany him, but received a refusal, which made her run away in tears. In another area of the forest, Draws sensed the approach of powerful creatures and sent the Mamasitas to investigate. While Rise took advantage of the situation to steal the remaining weaver eggs, the Mamasitas caught up with the blonde boy and, unlike the previous time, chose dialogue instead of violence. It was a grave mistake, as the boy tried to escape. Soon, the weavers appeared, and the Mamasitas realized they needed to stop them before they reached the village. At that very moment, he heard Latifa's desperate scream and rushed toward her. She was being attacked by the weaver, and before she could be defeated, the soul appeared to protect her, ordering the creature to retreat. The redhead summoned 2 creatures to attack, but their blows had no effect, and she ended up receiving painful injuries. Then Latifa decided to act. To save the village, she knew she needed to draw the weaver away, even if it meant risking herself. He thought that, for some, it was always easier not to act. But Latifa did not hesitate. Before the situation worsened, Rio arrived and saved her. With firmness and determination, he defeated the dragon with a powerful spell, dodging the flames and finishing with a strike that seemed to tell the creature to stop right there. As for the weaver, the survivors retreated after the dragon's fall. Everyone was impressed by Rio's power and thanked him for his protection. The next morning, Latifa apologized for having run away and caused trouble. Although she thought she had never seen him act like that before, Rio wished for her to understand his decision and, therefore, explained the reason for his journey to Aayagumo. Remembering that it was a difficult but necessary phase, Latifa also admitted to being from another world, something he had already suspected. She stated that he was as well, and the two promised to become stronger before leaving. Dominique handed him a sword and a cloak made of black wire. Ursula provided supplies and medicines, as the dangers along the way would be intense. Finally, Sora would give him a special artifact, capable of storing all his belongings in a practical way. Since carrying a common backpack would certainly harm the protagonist's image, he assured the elders that, should the village face any danger in the future, he would not hesitate to return to protect them. Then, he would say farewell to Latifa and the Mamasitas, who, overcome with sadness, wished him a safe journey. wearing completely new clothes and leaving his faithful furry friend in tears. Our Pluto moved forward, while Aayagumo would find a better destiny in Nonk. At last, he arrived in his homeland, Aayagumo, a place where almost everyone had black hair like his own. The presence of a stranger made the residents suspicious, so, to avoid alarm, the protagonist introduced himself calmly and was soon led to a meeting with the village leader. At that moment, a short-haired young woman named Rosaria ran to her grandmother, the matriarch Iyuba, leader of the women of the village. Taken to the small residence, the protagonist introduced himself to the elder, who calmly asked the reason for his visit. Rio explained that he was searching for someone, and Iyuba encouraged him to speak without fear. He revealed that he was looking for his parents, and upon hearing the names mentioned, Iyuba asked the women to leave, leaving them alone. Despite her surprise, she accepted the conversation. Iyuba asked for more details, and Rio told her that his father had disappeared even before his birth, and that he only knew old accounts. While his mother always spoke about Aayagumo and promised to take him there, a promise she never managed to fulfill. The elder then revealed that she knew his parents very well. In fact, she was Zen's mother, the protagonist's grandmother and the leader of the female village. Receiving him with affection, Iyuba confessed that there was something important he needed to see. Thus, she led him to the cemetery, where Rio was surprised to find his parents' graves. Both said a prayer, while the elder explained that they had left the country for different reasons. Confused, the protagonist asked whether they had decided to abandon him, and Iyuba replied that, at the time, they believed it was the best choice, but that it did not mean a lack of love. She then invited him to stay in Aayagumo, living alongside her and his cousin Ruri, the short-haired young woman. After that, Rio returned to the house, where the women were already waiting for him for dinner. The next morning, he woke up early and, to his grandmother's surprise, Ruri was also awake, still sleepy, showing effort to accompany him. Upon remembering that Rio would now live with them, the young woman became embarrassed and ran off to get ready. Then, everyone prepared miso soup together. The protagonist demonstrated his skill by creating water using magic. Ruri's friends would arrive for the meal, and thus we would meet Seo and her brother Shin. Rio would introduce himself, although he felt a little out of place amid the lively atmosphere. Soon after, Iyuba would ask Shin to take Rio hunting. The young man would think that someone with such a refined appearance would not fare well in the wilderness, but he would accept the task, warning that he would not go easy on him. Rio would accompany him while the women stayed behind alone. Seo, blushing, would comment that the protagonist was as attractive as a well-prepared dish, perhaps even more tempting than a freshly baked sweet. During the hunt, Rio would surprise Shin by capturing several prey, while the young man, frustrated at failing to catch anything, would end up walking away in irritation. At the end, Rio would use his powers to raise a barrier and rest, something Ruri and Seo would not immediately understand until they saw him step out from inside it. Next, Ruri would drag him to take a bath and force Seo to do the same. The pleasant scent left by the protagonist, a mix of masculine perfume with something reminiscent of soap, would make the girls feel even more enchanted. Shin would appear accompanied by friends and would deny being jealous just because Rio was drawing attention from his sister. Even so, Seo would confront him, saying that he was being far too rude. Gradually, Rio would begin his new life in the village, drawing glances because of his striking appearance. The village of Aayagumo was preparing to receive a tax inspector, and Iyuba would inform the protagonist that she would need his help with a specific task. However, screams would interrupt the moment. Shin would be arguing with men from another village, who had spied on the women during their bath. The leader of the group, Gon, was the son of the chief of the neighboring village. Rio would try to intervene, but Shin would be so enraged that he would almost seriously injure the man. Iyuba would arrive to contain the situation and, upon seeing Shin's attitude, would send him back to the guest cabin. As he left, he would try to trip Rio, but would end up falling by himself. The next day, the tax inspector Rat would arrive to evaluate the harvest. He would be welcomed with a grand banquet, and everything would seem perfect. However, the night before, he and his men had infiltrated the women's quarters, attempting to abuse one of them. At the very moment this was happening, Ryo would appear, asserting himself with a strong and intimidating presence. Reunited would recognize him as the one responsible for his mother's death. For the first time, Ryo would lose control and, after dragging him outside the cabin, would beat him brutally. The others would be subdued and imprisoned. Before Reunited died, he and the rest would be handed over to Ayuba, who would begin tending to the protagonist's wounds. Days later, the taxes would be sent to the kingdom along with the criminals, who would be incarcerated. Finally, Ryo would send a letter to Reunity's father. Then, he would depart for another village escorted by guards, who would be impressed by his strength. Eventually, they would arrive at the capital of the Kingdom of Karsuk. There, he and some villagers would be accommodated in a cabin. Ayuba would ask Shin and Ryo to accompany the prisoners to the official handover. Afterward, everyone would gather to eat a dish similar to ramen. Although it had another name, which would surprise the protagonist, Shin would thank Ryo for protecting the women, making it clear that they were finally beginning to understand each other. The next day, Ryo and Seo would go out shopping. At the end, he would invite her to eat ramen, commenting that he had never tasted that flavor. Seo would accept enthusiastically, moved by the invitation. A vendor would offer an ornament, and Ryo would ask her to choose something. Despite saying that she did not need anything, she would end up choosing a hairpin. Ryo would comment that it looked very beautiful on her, but upon hearing the price, he would pretend that he would come back later. Even while complaining about the cost, he would buy the item, saying that money was not a problem. Before they left, the vendor would advise Seo not to let Ryo slip away, leaving her thoughtful. While they were walking, some criminals would try to kidnap a young woman. Ryo would intervene without hesitation, defeating the attacker and supporting the girl in his arms. Her guard would apologize, but before he could thank him, Ryo and Seo would move away to avoid attention. The leader of the capital would discover the kidnapping of his daughter and, upon reading Ayuba's letter, would be shocked. Later, Ryo would meet with members of his village when, to his surprise, the leader of the capital, Gok, would appear before him. Gok would lead him to a hall where his wife, Kyoko, would also be present. They would reveal that, years earlier, they had been loyal servants of his mother, Ami, a member of the royal family. The protagonist would be stunned by the revelation. The kingdom of Karasuk was at war, and his father, recognized as the best soldier in the country, had been named a noble warrior. Gok had tested him in a duel, and, after exchanging blows like true warriors, they had ended up becoming great friends. Thus, it was decided that Ryo's father would receive the title of guard of the royal family, and would come to directly protect Ami. As time passed, their constant coexistence gave rise to feelings between the two, and soon that professional bond transformed into something deeper. However, a rival kingdom attempted to kidnap Yami. Ryo's father managed to stop the attack and save her, but the enemy prince, consumed by fury, ended up accepting a peace agreement. From that episode onward, Ryo's father was officially chosen as the protector of the royal family. As part of the treaty, Solo offered his own head to Z and also gave Yami in marriage, which explained why his parents decided to abandon the country. This meant that Ryo was, in truth, a prince, and that Yami had been a princess without ever wearing a crown. The next day, they asked Ryo to go to the palace to meet his grandparents. They were moved upon seeing him. Yuku commented that he looked very much like his mother, while his grandfather, Ramira, asked him to talk about his parents. With sadness, Ryo replied that both had already passed away. He said that he barely remembered his father, as he had lived only with his mother until about 5 years of age. Whenever he thought of her, the image that came to mind was her gentle smile. Then, Omura asked how Yami had died. Ryo told them that she had been murdered before his eyes by a man named Lucius, who had once been a friend of the family. He had entered the house, attacked Ryo, poisoned him, and tried to take him away. When the protagonist regained consciousness, he saw Lucius stabbing his mother, which caused him to faint again. Later, he woke up alone amid the poor districts. He also recounted the day he saved Flora, spoke about the pouch he received, and told everything he had lived through up to that moment. His grandparents were deeply moved and imagined that he and his mother probably hated them, since any ordinary person would feel the same. Ryo stated that he did not hate them. He said that the only person he truly hated was his mother's murderer. The thirst for revenge was what had kept him alive. and he swore that, if he ever encountered Lucius again, he would kill him with his own hands. Omura said that he understood his pain, but reminded him that revenge corrodes the soul and poisons it. Even so, Ryo was firm in saying that he would not give up. Faced with this, the grandfather accepted his decision, but demanded that he prove his strength by fighting against Gokushus. Ryo accepted the challenge and went to Gok's house, where he found Gok's daughter, the same young woman he had saved earlier in the village. The duel began without hesitation. Ryo attacked with force, surprising the muscular warrior, who immediately recognized the young man's frightening potential. Gok used a secret technique, but Ryo managed to evade it and responded with an even more powerful strike, winning the fight and leaving everyone in shock for having defeated their strongest warrior. After that, Ryo thanked them for the hospitality and returned to Aayagumo. Before his parents' tombs, he promised that now that he knew his origins and everything they had faced, he would fight against any obstacle so that they could rest in peace. It was the beginning of a new phase, the true awakening of Ryo. On a rainy night, he told Ruri that they were cousins and that he was also the prince of the nation. Although he was not yet officially recognized, Ruri thought it was a joke, until his grandmother confirmed that the elders already knew this story. Shocked, Ruri knelt down, calling him Your Highness, but Ryo asked to be treated as always. Ruri accepted, but asked the same in return. Ryo then revealed that he would leave Aayagumo the following year, which saddened Yuba. Even so, he promised that he would return one day and explained that everyone needed, at some point, to follow the path of their origins. The next day, the group began to question why Ryo treated Ruri so informally, as they could not tell the whole truth. Doubts, jealousy, and rumors arose, especially among the girls, with Seo being the most affected. Time passed, winter brought snow, and then the warm months came, along with the planting season. One day, Ruri spoke with Seo, who revealed her intention to leave in the autumn, after the harvest. The news surprised Ruri, and soon everyone discovered that Seo intended to leave the country. Upon learning that Ryo would also be leaving, she began to cry, and when Seo cried, it felt as if everyone cried along with her. Later, she ran off into the forest to cry alone, where she was found by Shin. He suspected that everything involved Ryo and decided to confront him. But Seo stopped him, explaining that Ryo needed to follow his own path. Even so, Shin went after him. When he arrived at the protagonist's house, he fell to his knees and begged him not to leave. Yes, it was there that unexpected bromance was officially born. Seo arrived shortly after to pull Shin back, embarrassed by the scene, and the two left together. And yes, that marriage was practically written. Time moved on, and Seo spent months training spiritual arts. Finally, the harvest season arrived, and during the festival, Gok and his family also appeared. During the celebration, Seo called Ryo aside to talk and, nervously, confessed her feelings. Ryo, however, apologized and explained that he could not return them. She did not give up and at least asked to accompany him on his journey, saying that she had been training so as not to be a burden. Even saddened, Ryo refused again. Desperate, she held his hand and begged to go with him, even if he did not speak to her. Still, the protagonist left, leaving her behind. Shin, who had observed everything, found Seo shortly afterward. Ryo said goodbye to Ayuba and Ruri, who wished him a good journey. As he was leaving the village, Seo appeared once more. After talking with Gok, she decided that she could not abandon her feelings and promised to become worthy of him in the future. Ryo headed to the mystical forest, where Latifa and the others received him with hugs. He told the elders everything and asked permission to stay for a few months. He promised Latifa that he would not take so long to return. The girls welcomed him warmly, saying they awaited the day when they would become so enchanting as to leave him speechless. Then, Alaska and the others asked who that mysterious girl was. Chaos began when they found Ryo in the middle of a strange ritual. He was awakening a pink-haired young woman, who explained that she was a humanoid spirit saved by him when she was a child. However, she remembered nothing, not even her own name, and asked Ryo to give her one. Even existing because of him, she began calling him simply Ryo, leaving everyone confused. She could communicate with him by telepathy, and the protagonist did not know how to deal with that. He took her to the elders. After dressing her and ensuring that she was conscious, Ryo, without realizing it, chose for her the name Aya, a mixture of the name of his former beloved and Spring. The elders continued speaking with him, curious about the desire to access her memories. Faced with this, Ryo stood firm, determined to speak calmly, until he concluded that he needed to discover what kind of spirit she truly was. If he was capable of fulfilling ancient decrees and controlling all elements, he needed to test this in practice. Thus, he decided to initiate a combat that would serve as definitive proof. Rai advanced with astonishing speed, almost impossible to follow with the naked eye. At the same time, Cal and Virgilini appeared to confront the pink-haired girl, who responded by launching cutting techniques that were extremely precise. Faced with the situation, Ryo concluded that it would be safer to resort to everyday magic, the kind that allowed him to reproduce any ability with absolute accuracy. The confrontation became so violent that the very stability of the place seemed to falter for moments, coming close to affecting the entire surrounding village. Observing closely, Dre declared that he would take responsibility for training her as a spirit in human form. He welcomed her with genuine enthusiasm, celebrating her arrival as something momentous. During this period, the girl began spending long hours at Ryo's side, learning, training, and sharing time with him. Thinking about this, Dominic decided to give the protagonist a special residence, equipped with a space-time pulsation device that would allow it to be carried anywhere he wished. The house even came with a bathtub installed. With everything settled, Ryo concluded that it was time to return to the capital. Seirei, however, asked that he spend a bit more time with Latifa. That night, while relaxing immersed in the hot water, Ryo reflected that he had hardly stayed by the Farida's side because he had been too focused on his training. It was at that moment that Latifa entered the bath, leaving him completely nervous. She offered to wash his back and complained softly about how much he had distanced himself. With little choice and feeling guilty, Ryo accepted, reminding himself that he needed to be more present. He only asked that she not get too close to the towel, but Latifa replied with a mischievous smile, as if she had already been expecting that reaction. While helping him, she said that in her previous life in Japan, her name had been Suzune. She also revealed that she knew Harudo was the name of his other life. Upon hearing this, she explained that he had suffered an accident inside a bus, and that was when Ryo understood that she was the same girl he had seen at the very beginning of everything. Moved, Latifa hugged him, making him promise that he would return as quickly as possible. The next day, Ryo and Aisha said goodbye to the elders. As usual, they gave him a gift, a teleportation crystal capable of taking him back to the magical forest whenever activated, in addition to an enchanted area that would allow camouflage. Latifa said her farewell shortly afterward and departed. Elsewhere, Selia finally reappeared after a long time, accompanied by Charles. He commented that she looked dazzling, and, nervous, she thanked him while holding the last letter sent by Ryo. Meanwhile, the protagonist arrived at the capital and used the pendant to change the color of his hair. He soon noticed that many people had been summoned for a parade related to the wedding of a noblewoman, something that intrigued him. That same night, with Aixia's help, he sneaked into the academy and went straight to Celia's hall. Upon opening the door, he found everything empty, which made him uneasy. When he questioned one of the professors, he discovered that the parade would celebrate Celia's marriage to Charles. Upon hearing this, Ryo became alarmed, silently imagining whether they were about to take everything she had from her. He asked the reason and was told that the Empire of Proxia had defeated the Kingdom of Bertram and blamed Celia's family, forcing the royal family to flee. To avoid the complete ruin of the kingdom, they decided to seal a political marriage. After that, Ryo left the place with Aisha. He stated that he needed to speak with Selia, and the spirit Raja offered to go to her, since her spiritual form would allow her to infiltrate without being noticed. At that very moment, Celia's father had arrived one day before the ceremony. Charles assured him that everything would proceed perfectly and that his daughter would not be in danger. The man felt relieved, but was soon confronted by Charles, who mentioned rumors about a possible coup involving him and his men. The father denied any involvement, but Charles reinforced that he trusted him, while at the same time making clear what would happen if he were betrayed. Irritated, the man was forced to remain silent. Ryo, in turn, arrived at the palace surrounded by guards. Aayagumo found an opening and showed him how to enter unnoticed. Selia was in her room, distressed at being forced to marry in order to protect her family and the kingdom. She held a letter from her father, wishing to see him once more, and was about to burn it when Ryo entered. She could hardly believe he was there. After 4 years, the long-awaited reunion finally happened. Ryo said that, although she had always been beautiful, she was now even more radiant, causing the albino girl to blush deeply. Selia commented that he had grown, was stronger, and much more attractive. Ryo tried to explain how he had arrived there, but she interrupted him to prepare something for him. Afterward, he asked directly about the marriage, wanting to know whether it was truly her will or merely a sacrifice for her family. Selia said that she would resolve everything, but suddenly asked whether he was thinking of marrying her or helping her run away. She soon claimed it was a joke, though she admitted it might not have been entirely so. Since the ceremony would take place the next day, she asked him to leave and remove the pendant. However, when she heard Ryo say that he was not finished speaking, she pushed him outside. Alone, Selia began to cry, thinking that she had been very happy to see him again, even knowing that he should not get involved. The next day, Charles met with the king, who congratulated him on the marriage. During the conversation, both felt the presence of an extremely powerful spirit. Selia tried on her wedding dress, trying to convince herself that there was no other option. Charles ordered her to be presented to the others, and she obeyed, maintaining a firm expression. Christina was also present, now more mature, and upon seeing Selia, she congratulated her former teacher, called the groom a jerk, and said that he had taken everything she valued from her, including her magic studio. Selia quickly said that she was mistaken, but Christina promised to help her if necessary. Meanwhile, Charles spoke with Alfred and made it clear that the security of the parade would be under his responsibility. When the parade began, Selia maintained a gaze filled with sadness, while Charles murmured that he wished she would be his as soon as possible, just like the entire kingdom. Ryo was among the crowd and, upon perceiving her suffering, put his plan into action. He spoke to Selia through telepathy, making her see him in the crowd. The young woman began to cry. Charles, believing they were tears of emotion, ordered her to maintain her posture. Selia looked again, but Ryo had disappeared. The carriage arrived at the ceremony site, but before she could step down, a loud crash echoed. Ryo appeared running down the street, knocking down guards with spiritual techniques. Mages tried to stop him, but he dodged with ease, subduing the entire army without hesitation. When he finished, he struck Charles with a blow so brutal that it threw him to the ground. Then he spoke to Selia through telepathy. She asked him to stop, but Ryo explained that it was part of the plan. Even exhausted, he threatened Charles, stating firmly that he could break his back if necessary. He also made it clear that there was no plan that would allow that man to escape the consequences of his actions. Ryo asked Selia once again whether she truly wanted to marry, but when he noticed that she avoided answering, he said that he already knew she was being forced by Charles's family. He explained that he had returned for her because he could not bear to lose another important person. He asked her not to mock the situation and, even sounding selfish, promised that they would flee together to a place where no one could find them. In his thoughts, he reinforced that he would protect her at any cost. Finally, Selia admitted that she did not want to marry. Thus, the protagonist decided to finally execute his plan. With a firm and confident tone, he declared before everyone that Charles had kidnapped his fiancée, as if it were a scene taken straight from an exaggerated drama. Selia, perfectly understanding the role she needed to assume, began to act like someone fragile and frightened. In the next instant, she stumbled so convincingly that anyone would believe it without question. Enraged, Charles immediately ordered that Ryo be captured. However, the protagonist leapt into the air, dodging everyone with his spiritual arts and blocking the mage's attacks with absurd ease. At that moment, Charles realized that to defeat him, he would need to use an extremely powerful blow, both to measure his strength and to try to bring him down once and for all. To his surprise, Ryo contained the assault without any difficulty, revealing a power so overwhelming that it left everyone around in shock. Alfred, upon witnessing that, felt guilty for having allowed the situation to reach that point, but still asked his father to remain calm. Then, he left his brother responsible for security and set off in pursuit of Rio, who was already being hunted by the aerial guard. The protagonist asked his mamacita to hold on tight and accelerated at such an extreme speed that he looked like a lightning bolt cutting through the sky, leaving Selia completely surprised. In just a few seconds, he explained that they would need to separate for a brief moment. Upon reaching a clearing, he said that Asia would take her far away while he bought time by facing the soldiers. He promised that they would reunite soon. When the guards realized that Selia was no longer with him, they advanced with everything they had. Even so, Rio managed to disarm several, dodge attacks, and knock many down with a single blow. However, the excessive number of enemies began to weigh on him. That was when Alfred appeared. The protagonist immediately recognized the legendary figure known as the King's Sword. The strongest warrior advanced with determination, making it clear that he would not allow his escape. The confrontation between the two began. Rio realized that Alfred possessed impressive strength and that his sword carried an extremely powerful enchantment. The exchange of blows silenced the other soldiers, while Alfred admitted that he had underestimated his opponent. Shortly after, he unleashed an attack so intense that it seemed to have made Rio disappear. Even so, Alfred knew the strike had not been decisive and ordered the entire city to be searched. Meanwhile, Aya led Selia to the mountains, where Rio finally managed to reach them. The mamacita embraced him emotionally, thanking him for having saved her, and the two promised that from then on they would take care of each other. At that moment, Aya felt something strange spreading throughout the entire kingdom. Columns of colored light appeared, touching the clouds and remaining there for a few minutes before disappearing. Confused, Asia sensed an unusual presence and asked the protagonist to go help whoever needed it, while she took care of Selia. Shortly afterward, Rio discovered that some young people from another world had appeared in that region, but had been captured by mercenaries. He arrived in time to rescue them. When they realized that the protagonist spoke Japanese, the siblings were surprised. Rio defeated all the criminals and freed the youths. When he opened the last cage, he was greatly startled by who was inside. A true Majero. The cross from the other world watched Meraru attentively, silently swearing that he would protect her forever. The situation curiously resembled the path that the protagonist himself and Ari had once followed. Thus, the first season of Serene came to an end, more intense than ever. Harudo reunited with his friend Satsuki and discovered that she had met Teresa. Along with Matu and Yuki, siblings of Takarisa, he was transported to another world. The youths were captured by a hostile group, but Harudo rescued them by following traces of spatial magic and using a cell phone as a guide. He defeated the bandits, threatened the leader, and saved Misato, Yuck, and other children, including Mihao, leaving everyone impressed with his ability to communicate in that language. Harudo discovered that Mihao was Yuki's sister, and that Misato and Takarisa were her half-siblings, born from a new marriage of her mother. He took them to a safe place, where Aya and Selia arrived, and Harudo took on the role of translator. Axia welcomed everyone warmly, and the group entered the house while Harudo Rio bathed and talked. Selia explained that Aya was a spirit, and Mas concluded that they had been transported to a non-linear fantasy world, where the dangers were real. During dinner, Mihao told them that they had arrived there through a summoning magic, mentioning the legend of the 6 wise gods and the infinity jewels, while worrying about Satsuki and Takarisa. Axia insisted that Harudo Rio rest, explaining that she obtained energy through him while organizing the rooms. Later, Selia talked with Rio about his past and suggested that he write a letter to his father, reassuring the albino girl. In the Kingdom of Bertram, the king argued with Charlie about the failure of the marriage and the risk of the 1,000-year prophecy, since one of the 6 heroes was under his protection. At the same time, Hiroke, another summoned hero who had been playing video games, dined with the king and Duke Gustav, showing arrogance for having been chosen. Meanwhile, Harudo Rio went shopping with Selia, Axia, and Mihao, leaving the children at home. Small mishaps arose during the outing, and Locke and Asa revealed feelings and memories connected to Rio, awakening discreet jealousy and highlighting the strong bond between them. In the city, Rio distributed artifacts to change hair color, while the girls tried on various outfits and he gathered information about the heroes. At night, everyone returned home. Ryo handed new clothes to Ak and Masato, and the group decided to learn about the local language and customs before searching for Takisa and Satsuki. After that, Ryo visited the spirit village, being warmly received by Latifa, Seirei, and the elders. He explained the situation of the people from another world under his protection and asked permission for them to remain there until he found a way to send them back, including his rescued teacher. Ryo created a secret with Latifa involving Mikuru and Aki, promising to protect them. Meanwhile, Lyslot informed King Francois Keller about a heroine from the Kingdom of Galar, revealing that it was Satsuki. The king decided to meet her, confirming Ryo's theory. In parallel, Rise began to form an army of zombies to hunt people with magical energy. Back with the group, Selia took on the role of teaching Masato, while Aki helped Miharu in the kitchen. Ak showed frustration at being trapped in another world and at her brother's absence. Aru tried to calm everyone, while Aki became irritated by comparisons involving Ryo and went out to cool her head. Rise's zombies crossed the barrier and attacked the group, but A and Selia prepared to fight, being interrupted by the protagonist, who defeated the creatures with ease. The Cheeks Triquees apologized for the trouble and were praised by Ryo, who announced the change of residence. Rise continued recruiting more people, while Latifa welcomed the group enthusiastically alongside Nyatin, Natifa, Aquam, Masato, Seirei, and others. Seria introduced herself as Ryo's tutor, explaining the differences between Japan and that new world, while the elders carefully observed the children. At night, a welcome party was held, with Latifa taking care of Masato and Aki, while the others enjoyed the hot springs. Mas approached Ryo, curious about his strength, and he explained that he carried an important mission. Masato, in turn, declared that he wanted to protect Ai and Naru. The next day, Seiya watched Ryo's intense training and talked with him about his unresolved matters and his strong desire to protect the boys. The Cheeks Triss promptly offered to accompany him and provide support to strengthen his journey. In the Kingdom of Bertram, Latifa prepared food for the trip, while Mikaro received sincere praise, and Lolette met with Hiroke and Flora to inform him about the guests coming from the neighboring kingdom. However, Hiroke seemed more interested in Lolette's beauty than in the information she brought, even so agreeing to take part in the celebration. Selia, Ryo, and Aixier reached Celia's hometown by entering through a secret passage, where they delivered a letter to Holland, her father, who had been unable to find her anywhere. During the journey, he was forced to land due to the appearance of a dragon, and ended up encountering Hiroke, who offered to accompany him. Ryo arrived in the city of Rodden, but a distraction by Ixia allowed other events to unfold in parallel. At night, Hiroke met with nobles concerned about the dragon and offered to protect Elizabeth. While Lyslot presented a divine weapon, Captain Raymond recognized area goers among Lyslot's maids and promised to ensure their safety. During the journey, monsters surrounded the carriage, but Area kept everyone calm. While the soldiers defended the vehicle, Area and Lyslot's maids faced the enemies with great skill, surprising Rise and Holland. Hiroke showed nervousness as he tried to calm Flora and Ramana, but the attacks intensified with the arrival of minotaurs, making the situation even more dangerous. When Flora and Lyslot were on the brink of danger, Ryo appeared at high speed, defeating the monsters with his sword and precise movements, awakening memories of Flora's past by his side. He introduced himself as Ryo, while Lyslot revealed that she was the governor of Amand, and the maids soon recognized the hero of the Rika Guild. The group continued on with Ryo ensuring the protection of Axia and Selia. Along the way, he repaired the carriage and explained that his sword, a special artifact, served to channel his spiritual arts. The maids interacted with Harudo, offering drinks and showing admiration for him. Some nobles offered to accompany him, and he accepted only out of consideration for Lyslot. In the spirit village, Latifa taught the children while Masato accompanied them fishing, and Migaroke trained his spiritual arts. Ada felt frustrated at not progressing as she wanted, but decided to train alone. Latifa took care of everyone, remembering her past as a slave of the Bertram family and how Ryo had freed her, earning her trust and friendship. The group shared peaceful moments, such as a special breakfast and preparations for an apple pie, further strengthening their bonds. Meanwhile, in the capital Nidar of the Prox Empire, Emperor Nettle met with Lucius, who had gone to the grave of the protagonist's mother. The emperor requested his help to eliminate a young man who was interfering with his plans and who intended to kidnap Flora in Tamim. The group arrived in the city of Enin, leaving Rio under Aria's care. He reunited with Selia and Aisha at an inn, where they talked about recent events and planned to maintain good relations with Lyslot and other figures of the kingdom. Despite the need for caution during the night, the Duke and Delot commented on Bellaman's incapacity as a hero, highlighting Hirok as a symbol of the kingdom. While Harudo impressed everyone with his combat skills and respectful behavior, Stuart and Alfonso appeared accompanied by elite women and common workers, causing confusion in the restaurant. The protagonist handled the situation calmly, subduing Stuart and frustrating Alfonso. Lyslot and Jugo intervened, resolving the conflict through an agreement that involved accompanying Elizabeth to the forest as a form of redemption. The next day, formal apologies were made and a lunch was held with Hirok and Princess Flora, during which Rio told his story, the loss of his parents, and his way of life. He received proposals to work as a swordsman, which he seriously considered, demonstrating his skill and confidence. Hirok revealed that the heroine of the neighboring kingdom was Satsuki. Recognized by Rio as his own heroine, he discovered that other heroes would also be present at the festival, drawing him even closer to his objectives. In the Spirit Forest, Lucius appeared to attack, but was restrained by Rio, who easily defeated soldiers and enemies, including Alfonso and Alpha, displaying absolute control and impressive strength. In the end, Rio bid farewell to Lyslot and the group, while Flora thanked him in a special way, showing trust and closeness toward him. There were several forms of payment, and so Lyslot offered to organize another party soon, ensuring that everyone would attend, including Gyro, captain of the Tim Beat. Even so, Ramana noticed that Flora's behavior was strange, but Rio explained that she had been acting differently since his arrival. Flora began to grow irritated, and Ramana tried to defuse the situation with an excuse, pressing Hirok to change the subject. Meanwhile, Alfonso awoke at sunset and witnessed Rise using magic to transform soldiers into zombies. He had been kept partially conscious, as Rise planned to turn him into an even more powerful monster. Lucius immobilized Alfonso while Rise implanted a magical jewel in his chest, making him scream in pain as his body transformed. Zeno was informed about the disappearance of the reconnaissance troops and concluded that extremely powerful monsters were surrounding the city, realizing that they would need help. At the same time, Flora reflected in her room on the possibility of Rio and Harudo being the same person, with tears in her eyes as she thought that she might never be able to thank him for having saved her in childhood, while also recognizing that, because of her, Rio had needed to flee from home while still a child. Jean told Lyslot about the disappearance of the squad, leading her to decide to send a new search team. Choosing to wait until the next morning due to the darkness of the night, Zenot suggested asking Harudo for help, but Lyslot refused, as she still did not fully trust them, and he did not belong to the city of Amand. Shujin, despite accepting the decisions, showed irritation, finding that handsome young man in the forest strange. Reed's soldiers were almost ready to attack, and the guards informed Lucius that they would advance at dawn. Lucius suggested alerting Alfonso, now an uncontrollable monster, urging him to prepare, but at an unknown cost. At dawn, Oxia woke the protagonist upon sensing the approach of monsters, commenting that she had been feeling strange for not having detected them earlier. The guards at the entrance spotted a group approaching, and the bell rang urgently, alerting everyone. The protagonist was startled when an explosion shook the city, waking Selia, who clung to him as he explained the situation. Selia offered to fight alongside him, but Rio said he needed to prepare. Throughout the city, the residents were confused, hearing only the sounds of explosions. Rio climbed to the highest point and saw a massive army of monsters breaching the walls, while another group attacked from the opposite side, forcing the citizens to evacuate. Knowing escape was impossible, Rio asked his mamacitas to stay in the inn room while he reinforced the sector with fewer soldiers. Asia warned him to be careful and promised to protect Selia. Chloe helped at the wall, ensuring the villagers could flee. When all seemed lost, his falcon appeared, striking the monsters and forcing them to retreat. Chloe thanked him, but the protagonist said it was too early to celebrate. Drawing his sword, he prepared to confront the enemies, instructing Chloe to stop them from advancing to the plaza. With a powerful strike, he pushed back the monsters, leaving everyone in awe. Lyslot was informed that countless monsters had invaded the city and immediately sent her last maid to ensure her protection. A palace servant reported that Rio was fighting on the wall, calming the Mamacita. Meanwhile, Lucius and Rise took advantage of the chaos to infiltrate the city, waiting for the Minotaur's signal to attack the castle. They cut through monsters effortlessly, as if they offered no resistance. The guards recognized them, but were puzzled that the stronger monsters remained still. Cosette and Natalie reached the wall, impressed by Rio's power in action. The Mamacitas thanked him and offered to take his place, allowing him to rest, but asked permission to eliminate an advancing Minotaur. After a long-range attack pierced the creature's chest, successive devastating strikes followed. Naruto said goodbye and returned to his Mamacitas. Cosette, blushing, commented to Rio, "The real Rio, only mine, what a catch." Aria also approached with kisses, but the roar of minotaurs and zombies echoed loudly, signaling the start of the invasion. Lucius and Rise ordered Alfonso to prepare. Even stronger monsters began entering the city, and Rio told his Mamacitas to retreat. A hooded monster suddenly appeared, quickly eliminating several infiltrators. Chloe guided everyone to the North Castle refuge while informing Lyslot of the situation. Selia volunteered to escort the citizens to safety. In the palace, Hiroke met with the Duke and the princesses, trying to defend against the imminent attack. Alfonso and Lucius reached the palace, ready to invade the meeting room. A guard tried to stop them, but Lucius moved aside to distract them. Alfonso advanced, destroying the door accompanied by zombies, taking down everyone inside. Even injured, they quickly rose, ready to fight. Hiroke pushed the princess and others aside, while the guards struggled against the enemies, unable to stop Alfonso. For the first time, they felt a direct attack, being bitten in the legs. Kurikikwi summoned her sword, but Alfonso responded with absurd speed, surprising everyone with a precise strike. He mocked the so-called hero and attacked Gino, piercing his chest and sending him crashing into EST, who panicked seeing her father wounded. Han told Flora to flee while he tried to buy time, knowing it was their only chance. The soldiers faced the zombies, opening a path for the ladies to approach the exit. At that moment, a voice echoed down the corridor, and Hana shoved Flora out quickly, asking someone to protect her. As expected, it was Lucius. He grabbed Flora's arm firmly and took her with him. Simultaneously, the protagonist reached the palace, and Asia immediately sensed the presence of a powerful monster. Lucius ordered Flora to calm down and revealed his plan to kidnap her. Rise appeared, terrified, to prevent him from ruining everything, ordering that she be taken away quickly. In the palace hall, Han was the last survivor. After immobilizing Holland, Alfonso prepared to finish her off. At that moment, the toy hero finally awakened, consumed by fury, and charged without hesitation against the zombies, eliminating 2 of them. He admitted to having underestimated the diva heroine. With superhuman speed, he saved Hana from a fatal attack and struck Alfonso with a powerful blow. The impact caused an explosion that destroyed part of the wall, drawing everyone's attention. Surprisingly, Alfonso managed to escape. Hiroke tried to stop him, but Rise immobilized him from behind and summoned more zombies, spreading even more chaos among the citizens. Rio swiftly eliminated the monsters when he heard Flora's desperate scream for help. Lucius spoke to her, and upon recognizing the princess's voice, the protagonist felt a surge of fury. Before he could advance, a massive army of zombies blocked his path. Everything was part of a carefully planned scheme. At that moment, Lyslot's ladies arrived. Axia ordered the protagonist to go after the princess while they handled the zombies. Selia insisted he go, promising they could handle the situation on their own, showing strength and determination. Aya expressed her gratitude, and Rio immediately set off in pursuit of Flora. Selia erected a barrier to protect Lyslot and the citizens, while Axia fought alongside the soldiers, casting pure magic relentlessly. Using Chloe's weapon, she effortlessly eliminated the zombies. The full team was in action. Alfonso recognized Axia and ordered Lyslot to be captured. The zombies managed to breach Selia's barrier, and although she defeated some, she ended up at a disadvantage. Aya did not hesitate to protect her. Even unarmed, Alfonso attacked, but Selia dodged. Natalie launched another weapon, allowing Aya to immobilize Alfonso by piercing his chest. But the villain refused to fall. Then, the pink-haired girl decapitated him, ending his threat once and for all. Meanwhile, Rio followed the trail left by Lucius and caught up to him in the forest, advancing with incredible speed. Lucius was shocked to see someone had tracked him so quickly. In the mansion, Maidru observed Haruto's memories with his mother, and the moment Lucius panicked, he witnessed Rio taking Lucius's life as he raced to protect Flora. The little mother woke up, confused, not understanding what had happened. Back in the forest, Rio stared at Lucius with hatred in his eyes, while Flora, relieved to see him, watched the scene. The protagonist ordered Lucius to remove his hood. The villain reminded him he still held the princess and threatened to kill her. But Rio distracted him, explaining that he had not followed her because of her, but because of an old debt. The plan worked. Lucius realized the young man had a pact with a humanoid spirit. Rio revealed he had been seeking Lucius for years just to kill him. Lucius shouted, calling him a liar, and threw his dagger in fury. But Rio remained unharmed, astonishing him. Recognizing the opponent's skill, Lucius drew his sword and advanced, using Flora as a shield. He felt disgust realizing the protagonist cared about protecting her. In the mansion, monsters surrounded Aya, and Selia told her to flee. Lucius tried to corner Rio, but he freed himself and unleashed a devastating magic blast. Lucius tried to resist, but Rio advanced relentlessly. He offered surrender, but the villain refused. Without alternatives, Lucius threatened the princess again. While Rio remained silent, knowing he needed to keep her alive, Lucius began to deduce who she was, realizing that the protagonist had known her since childhood and that she was not from that region. Even so, Rio's coldness enraged him. Then he proposed a deal. Flora would reveal her name and be released, as long as she did not try to escape. Since monsters still roamed the forest, the protagonist asked her to step aside and then revealed his true identity. He told that they had met 10 years ago in the capital of Bertram, when he had taken care of a woman and her son for several years. Lucius began to laugh, surprised that he was still alive. Rio recalled that tragic day, the first time he met Selia, when he saw Axia, when his grandmother showed him the graves of his parents, and when he met his mother's parents. The only reason he had survived until then was to avenge his parents. Lucius finally recognized Rio and became excited upon realizing how much he had grown, just like his father. Then, he mocked the protagonist's mother, calling her weak for pleading for her own life, something he considered pathetic. Flora finally recognized Rio, remaining speechless. The protagonist remained calm. Lucius removed his cloak and ordered an attack. Before he could react, Rio cut his left arm with frightening speed. Lucius tried to counterattack, but was unable to keep up with his movements. With a brutal kick, Rio struck his face and, using devastating spiritual arts, destroyed everything around, plunging Lucius into pure terror. He tried to escape, but Rio was faster, immobilizing him and casting magic without giving him any opening. Almost unbelievably, Lucius managed to escape for a moment. However, when he tried to counterattack with his sword, he was knocked down by a single precise strike from Rio. Even gravely injured, the villain refused to give up. Showing no mercy, Rio advanced again, unleashing magic in a brutal way, not caring that Flora was witnessing everything. The intensity of the attack left the girl completely terrified. "Stop, he's already dead," someone shouted desperately. But the protagonist did not back down. Lucius knew he needed to reattach his own arm, and Rio, with terrifying precision, prevented it at the exact moment. With his vision consumed by ashes and hatred, he decided it was time to end this once and for all. He charged at Lucius and struck his face with a violent knee. Then, with the sword engulfed in flames, he blocked the enemy's last attempt to attack Flora, stopping the dagger approaching the princess's neck. At that moment, Rise appeared trying to save Lucius, but Rio coldly ordered him to let go, stating he still had unfinished business with that man. Humiliated, Lucius murmured with disdain, gave a skirt to the girl. The boyfriend came to defend her. He demanded that Rise let the duel continue, but the ally preferred to retreat. withdrawing his army. As a distraction, Rise summoned a dragon, which launched devastating attacks against Rio and the princess. Still, Selia protected the villagers by raising a powerful magical barrier. Aya felt relief upon realizing that Rio and Flora were safe. Trembling, emotional, and relieved, Flora called for him. Rio apologized for all the problems caused and held her in his arms for a brief moment, but soon stepped back, stating he did not deserve her gratitude. Flora only asked that he forget her name, saying that would be enough. Crying, she apologized for having lost control. Lyslot thanked Selia and Ixia for their help, because, thanks to them, the number of wounded soldiers had been lower. The Mamacitas arrived at the meeting room to take care of the wounded, including Duke Genot. Lyslot explained that the attack had been completely unexpected and that Hirok had defeated several enemies but had ended up unconscious. Jujin tried to comfort Han, who blamed himself for Flora's kidnapping, while Asia reported that Rio had already returned with the princess safely. The beauties approached the protagonist, thanking him for having saved Flora. He admitted that the kidnapper had escaped, but Lyslot stated that he had already done more than enough and invited him to rest. Flora did not want to move away from him, her legs still trembling, and Haruto offered to carry her. The protagonist revealed that he had known Lucius from the past, explaining that there was an old bond between him and the heroine. Lucius, consumed by rage, internally recognized his own weakness by being defeated again, understanding that he was not up to the task. After the confrontation, everyone proceeded to the room with Jujin. Rio thanked everyone for their help, said goodbye to Flora, and left accompanied by the beauties, despite Lyslot insisting that he rest before continuing the journey. Alone with the beauties, Rio explained that Flora had discovered his true identity, but still did not fully trust him. Therefore, he planned to return to the spirits' village after that encounter. Selia asked about Lucius, but Rio avoided going into details, stating that it was not essential at that moment. Later, during a meeting with the leaders, he was informed that Lucius had faced Alfred, the holder of the King's Sword title, but had not been chosen and had disappeared. Reed, in turn, maintained negotiations with the Proxia Empire, although his identity still remained unknown. Finally, Rio suggested participating in the hero's presentation event in the spiritual forest, where everyone would gather to celebrate and welcome him and the others. Latifa shared that Satsuki, her friend, was the heroine of the Kingdom of Galar, and that they would meet soon, although her other friend had not yet been located. Thus, the beauties organized a reception party, and, after a month, the group departed toward the hero's presentation, where they would meet Satsuki, the hero of the Kingdom of Centella, and other legendary warriors of Bertram. In this way, the second season of Seirei ended, leaving in the air the promise of new journeys, even greater dangers, and epic challenges ahead.